from today anyway, and that seem to be reflected. And I'd like to kind of go over them and get people's input about them and people's thoughts about them. So the first one is just the basic point about that as of today anyway, RDF looks like the best available candidate for a universal healthcare exchange language. How many in this room would agree with that point? Okay, so I'm seeing a clear majority.
Any other viable contenders?
Yeah, that's a good question. Are there any other contenders that anybody would think of?
Well, there was a presentation.
And if so, what are you doing in this room?
There was a presentation earlier today on open data on the web. And apparently in Europe, the idea of metadata connected with comma-delimited files is big.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Paul.
My only hesitation was it might not be specifically enough defined. So I'm not sure about RDF as a format that is interchanged versus a metaphor for representation. So it stops a little short of maybe fully covering or RDF, versus language.
Yeah. There certainly nuances as well.
Alternative, if you look at schema.org or microdata and all that stuff, and why RDF hasn't taken off in general, is people say just do selective markup on HTMLs and things like that, particularly for semi-structured stuff like documentation.
Yeah.
That's the push. That's the thing that the Googles, all those boxes are.
Right. Yep. How many would trust medical systems using that approach?
Well, it's probably a variation of it's probably going to be used for semi-structured data and all those doctors' notes anyway. That's it. RDFA, even if it's RDF, they'll use it for that.
I have a question.
Okay. Yeah.
Another question for the group. I'm just wondering, how does the group feel about the term language? Even though we think of RDF as a language, is that the right spin? Because that does sort of sound like a one-size-fits-all approach, and people who have vocabulary, SNOMED and RxNorm, might think of what they're doing as languages.
Yeah, and of course RDF allows that all to come into play. So does anybody have an answer for that? Yes, Jeremy?
RDF doesn't stand for language. Language actually means the noun.
Yes.
It stands for framework.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yep.
So I was going to say the same thing. We're sort of talking all about standards and so language naturally, you're doing vocabulary and nomenclature and all that. But it really helps when I'm in a sales meeting and I say it's a resource description framework for describing resources. W3C standard. People get that.
Yeah. Okay, we better move on because we don't have a lot of time left. So the next one. Government agencies should mandate or incentivize the use of RDF as a universal healthcare exchange language and the adoption of approved standard vocabularies and data models. So how many in the room would agree with that point? Seeing a handful? Okay, say it again. Okay, government agencies, and really when I wrote this I was thinking of the meaningful use requirements actually. Government agencies should mandate or incentivize the use of RDF as a universal healthcare exchange language and the adoption of approved standard vocabularies and data models.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so that one seems to be kind of on target as well.
You could also add into there, it should be a requirement of RFPs.
No, well, I put it that it should be allowed as an alternative. Right now they mandate the CDA. Yeah. If they literally said, we will let you, for the meaningful use stuff, publish in RDF or the CDA XML, it'll be game over. All they have to do is give the incentive payments for both. If they say, I don't care if the same content is there, if you give it in RDF or you give it in the XML soup, as long as the content's the same, I'll give you your money. As a hospital, it'll be there.
CDA is an information model.
But the
CCD
CCD has a particular markup, the schematron, you have to publish it in the CCD XML.
So, I mean, are you saying CCD and RDF would be okay?
Yeah, yeah, it's a start.
CCD could just be be viewed as a serialization of RDF.
You just basically take the same information content, but now rather than that soup of XML, it's
Because I've seen
RDF.
it in JSON, you know.
Right.
CCD and JSON.
Right.
A little bit more digestible than XML, but,
Right.
so I mean, is that what you're advocating for?
You could literally flip it with an XSLT. You'd have it in RDF or vice versa.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
All right, let's
It's
go
a
on to
start.
the next one.
But but unless it's allowed as a parallel, they're not going to get the money for it.
Okay, next one is existing healthcare information representation standards, vocabularies, data models, etc., should be leveraged by defining standard machine processable mappings to RDF that retain full semantic fidelity and information granularity. So, how many would agree with that?
Can we modify that some?
Yeah,
Pretty aggressive.
I don't know if we.
why not go all out?
So, well, you know, the verb is a should, so it's not a must. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good to craft, to kind of fine-tune these a bit, but we are running out of time, so I think I'm just going to have to take a rough litmus test on these. So, sorry, can I get a show of hands? How many, this is existing healthcare information representation standards, vocabularies, data models, should be leveraged by defining standard machine processable mappings to RDF that retain full semantic fidelity and information granularity. That is kind of a mouthful, isn't
What
it?
would the goal of it?
Means you should map them to RDF. Sure, it
Should be mapped to RDF.
Map them to RDF.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, show of hands of how many agree with that one?
With the revision. With qualifications.
Yeah.
With qualifications, okay, yeah. All right, good. That looked like. Okay, next one. Electronic healthcare information should be made available in a form that either A, is an RDF format directly, or B, has been adopted as a standard and has a standard mapping to RDF. How many on that one? Okay. Next one. Exchanged healthcare information should be self-describing using linked data principles so that each concept URI is dereferenceable to its free and open definition. How many on that? Okay, good. And last one I got here was to continually increase the scope of semantic interoperability, additional standards with RDF mappings should be adopted whenever possible. How many on that? You want to hear that again?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. To continually increase the scope of semantic interoperability, additional standards with RDF mappings should be adopted whenever possible.
It's very similar to the long-winded one.
Yeah, it is similar, isn't it? I guess it's just, I was trying to get at the idea of continuing to expand how much standardization there is over time.
How about new standards should be represented as in
New standard.
new standard development activities should be represented with should have an RDF representation.
New standards should have an RDF representation. Okay, how about that one? All right, so how many in favor of that one?
You repeat it?
New standards should have an RDF representation.
Because we already have old standards should be reflected in RDF, so this is really just deconflicting those two things.
Okay, so on number 7, new standards should have an RDF representation. How many agree with that one? Okay, and what about the previous one that was worded a little more difficultly? To continually increase the scope of semantic interoperability, additional standards with RDF mapping should be adopted whenever possible. How many on that one? Looks like the simpler one gets a better response on that. Okay, that's all we have on this. Anybody who wants to sign their name onto this, I'll make it available so that you can. The final thing.
Yeah, David, can we?
Yeah, we can absolutely. We can collaboratively edit it. We don't have time to right now.
No, I put it up as an editable document.
Okay, excellent. Yep, we'll do that.
So that
okay.
Yeah, so it can be approved.
Yep, sounds good.
signing.
Okay, so the final thing here is that we have on the agenda is just kind of closing thoughts and next steps. So at this point, I want to kind of open it up to people's comments on, you know, what do you think? Where do you think we should go from here? What did you like about this workshop? What didn't you like? Yes, sir.
I'm less interested in what we liked and didn't like about what's next. And apparently, I mean, there's a lot of shared consensus here and a lot of people who want to move in a similar direction. And the question is, how can we hitch our wagons together? That's what I would think, in order to add to our momentum.
Yeah, great way to put it. So do people have thoughts for like specific ways that we can coordinate or move forward on this? Yes, Tom.
I'm planning on hosting a workshop in Encinitas, California, near San Diego, probably the last week of June. And it's one of these things that I collect. Connor's been to some of them, but I'm into that kind of stuff. It's a small scale deal. Maybe we could open it up, but I'm offering to host a workshop of that sort. The other thing that I see missing here, and maybe it's there subsumed, but where is the URI, a dedicated URI concept that we do have a URI for the granularity of the health information as proposed in the PCAST report? I mean, I think when we start talking semantic web, we assume it has to be there, but I think we need to explicitly say that the granularity of the PCAST needs to be expressed in a universal namespace approach. So.
Yeah, that it meets, that we actually on the agenda items, that one of the things we should have voted on was we feel that RDF best meets what PCAST called for. Because that's
a good point.
Links it into, you know, all of the stuff that is generally being called for, while we can't be in space.
So maybe that should be on the #1 here, and best meets the PCAST requirements?
Yeah, for namespaces and
I still want to see URI as adopted as a primary thing. I think that's something that people can get their heads around without a whole lot of abstraction.
Yeah, everyone knows that.
Can I get a show of hands of who is interested in collaborating on this in the future? Okay, we got some fair number here. Yeah.
And who's the target once this document or position gets written? Who's it go to?
Well, that's a good question too. Where should this document go? Should we do some kind of press release or? Yeah.
Well, it has to go. It should go to Todd Park and HHS and all.
Todd Park, yeah.
He's now above that. He's now the federal CTO.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, Jeremy.
One of my issues, a very practical issue, is that some of the people in this meeting are part of the W3C Healthcare and Life Sciences group, and that doesn't mean at a time that people in California can make very easily. Now, the focus of this meeting would be very US-centric, and a US-centric meeting would be at a time that is business out in California, whereas a worldwide meeting need not be. And I can't make too much of a fuss about the W3C time, because it's a worldwide scope. So the Europeans are important.
It's really a Eurocentric worldwide scope. Yeah.
We can meet at the US time.
Pacific.
Well, yeah. There is an overlap between the Pacific time and the Eastern time, but it's actually quite wide.
Yeah.
But that's a very practical point, and that's one of the reasons I didn't put my hand up as willing to contribute, because it has
right. By the way, is everybody familiar with the W3C interest group on healthcare and life sciences? It's one of the W3C interest groups. It has an active mailing list. If you're not familiar with it, just ask me later, and I'll connect you up with it. Yes, go ahead.
Were you thinking about making this a petition, some kind of online petition, trying to get people to sign, or is that beyond?
Yeah, I mean, once this is crafted, let's put up. I have in my mind this thing that, in software development is called the Agile Manifesto, which was very influential in software development, done by a bunch of, well, actually not very many, a small group of well-known software developers that were instrumental in developing the Agile kind of process for software development. And they put out this thing called the Agile Manifesto, right? And just listed about this many bullet points, right? And then they signed it. and they put it online, and anybody can sign it now, and it's got thousands of signatures now. So yeah, I mean, we could put this online and collect signatures too, yeah.
So my practical point was, I don't believe I can get sign-off to go to the meeting in Southern California. It's obviously doable.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's, take a few days out of my time in addition to this meeting, rather than doing delay stuff.
Right.
Well, no, not really.
Yeah.
But if it's sort of an hour or two a week, or every other week in a telecom, I can probably do that.
Okay, so something like a telecom might be
But
might
the
be
collaborative
viable.
document too, because people can come in and out of it. They don't
Yep,
necessarily have to
yep.
sync up on the call.
Okay, yes, Deborah.
I think we should take a multi-pronged approach. I think Jeremy said what he could conveniently do. I'm an academic, so one of the things that I can conveniently do is co-op proposals for sponsored research. I'd
Yeah.
like to collaborate with people who are actually trying to build things, do the research and build things that could be the testimonials. And other people can make their suggestions for what they can conveniently do.
Yeah, that's a good question to ask. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do. So what can each of us do?
Well, and then Josh runs an open source project. I have an open source project called Socratic Grid. Those are activities that have data sources and capabilities, whether it be code or services, that if publicly exposed in a way that was referenceable, you could start doing things in a very loose-knit, sort of informal way without necessarily having a full academic proposal with money, which would be wonderful, obviously, but that could be leveraged asynchronously.
So kind of part of that is it might be an opt-in list. Not everyone may want to be on it. It would be nice to sort of share the contact information in this group.
Right, good point. Okay, a mailing list, yeah. So actually, maybe I should ask here, because I have people's email address from when they fill out the form. Would anybody not want to be on that list? Or, I mean, I guess what I could do is I could create the list and then email you the information to sign on to it, to add yourself to it?
Who've already left.
Yeah, true. Okay, so I'll do that. So good idea. So I'll create a list and send out information about it, yeah. Okay, well, I think we're out of time now, pretty much. So I'd like to ask. Yep, go ahead.
I'd be sort of interested to see whether, I know you're more interested in the next steps, but I think as presenters, people need to constantly improve the way they are trying to communicate their message. I'd be very interested in knowing what people did or didn't like in 30 seconds or less.
Yeah, me too. Very useful. And let's see, on Wednesday, we're going to be doing a panel discussion at the conference too, which will talk about the outcomes of this workshop and try to summarize and discuss it. So any feedback you have on what important messages we should try to get across on Wednesday would be very helpful too.
I just want to say, I thought the collaborative editing and creating the notes in real time was brilliant.
Great. The wonders of the web.
Yeah.
I think one of those messages on Wednesday is how much consensus there is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Good point.
Yeah. Stan, do you want to make any final comments from back there? We're sitting up here, but you're sitting back there.
No, I think it's going in a good direction.
Okay. All right, so I guess that's it. I want to personally thank you all very much for taking your time out this afternoon to come to this. It's been great having you here, and I look forward to collaborating with you, on trying to push this forward. So. All right, thank you.